Hello Math 7 students, this is a day to practice area of a circle. To get started, we have a quick poll. The radius of a circle is 4 centimeters. What is the area of the circle? Please pause the recording until you have your answer so you can check it with the rest of the class. Okay, students in class did really well. I'm going to show different answers here in just a second, and we can talk about which answers are probably the best type of answers. So, I am giving you in this problem the radius. The radius of this circle is 4 centimeters. And I know the area for a circle is that radius squared, which is then multiplied by pi. So, oops, that should have been in red, sorry. That should have been a variable. The radius squared, then multiplied by pi. So, in this problem where I give you the radius, I say the radius is 4, all I have to do is take that radius, substitute in a value of 4, know that that radius needs to be squared, and then multiplied by pi, and that will be the area. In our last lesson, we did practice finding the area exactly in terms of pi, so this would have been an acceptable answer. We also practiced typing it into our calculator and getting a decimal approximation, which we call an approximate answer. And when I do that, 4 squared is 16. 16 multiplied by pi is equal to 50.26548, etc. So with that in mind, I want to show the different answers, and I'm going to let you guys decide which answer do you think is best. And I will have to scroll to get through. So just because 4 students answered doesn't necessarily make it the best, okay? So just because the majority said that doesn't necessarily make it the best. Let's take a look at these. Only difference between these is they said A equals, the area equals. Those are interesting versions. 50 centimeters squared. 50.24, which is interesting because this one is 50.27. And 50.3, which wouldn't round if it's 50.24. So very interesting here. Based on all that you see, have a discussion. We're going to pause the recording as students discuss which of these answers do you think is the best type of answer. So when I don't give you any guidance, I didn't tell you how to round, I didn't tell you any of that information, what answer do you think is the best? What are your thoughts? Gideon?
Well, I think 50.27 would be the best because it's more exact, but then you also have the 50.265, which is also exact.
Okay. So if I'm not necessarily looking for an exact answer, right? So yes, the more decimals, of course, the more accurate it is going to be. But in all of our other problems, I've always told you to round. So we understand that rounding is okay and sometimes rounding is necessary. So yeah, 50.27 is great. 50.265 is great. So which of these answers would I like better? 50.27, 50.27 centimeters squared, 50.27 up here. Which answer do you think is a better answer? Joshua? Yeah, that's a good point. So you're basing that off of some previous knowledge that when we enter, when we try and enter units in the calculator under this setting, it thinks that we're trying to multiply by variables. So this thinks it's 50.27 times c times m squared. So yes, I agree with that statement. However, I would like to point out, even though I absolutely agree with you, Joshua, I do like that this student recognized that the units would be centimeters squared. So if I were to be comparing, let's maybe say 50 centimeters versus 50 centimeters squared. Honestly, since you had tried to include the units, this one would be wrong because it's not centimeters. When we're talking about area, they are square units, so it should be centimeters squared. So one easy way to avoid that when we're typing answers into the calculator, just don't include those units, right? So what I would really like to see on something like this where I don't tell you exactly how to round, I say probably rounding to 2 decimal places is probably good. What that would have looked like then, instead of truncating, just cutting off after 2 decimal places, we would still want to round. I swear I keep on selecting purple, but it comes up blue. There we go. 50 point, if I want to keep 2 decimal places, that means I would look at this 5 in the thousandth thousandths place and see that that 5 would round that up to 50.27. So I do like that. And if on a paper quiz where you're not typing things into the calculator, the units are important. And so if the radius is centimeter, then the area would be in centimeters squared. So, moral of this story, give yourself a couple of decimal places to show some accuracy. Because we're multiplying by pi and pi is irrational, I want us to show a couple of decimal places. 3 is probably okay, 2 is okay, 1 maybe sometimes not enough unless I've specifically told you how to round. And don't worry about the units in the calculator. If you do include the units, make sure you're using them correctly. Centimeters squared when it comes to area. Today we're going to be practicing, and today we're not going to be entering this into the calculator. We're going to use the calculator as a tool, but we're not going to be submitting these as quick pulls. So when we answer these questions, we need to make sure that we are including our units of measure. So, area of a circle practice. Today really truly is a practice day, so today is more instructional than anything else. I will not be going over every single problem, but I will go over each type of problem. Notice the directions on 1 through 4. Find the diameter. Has nothing to do with area right now. I really just want you to solidify that understanding between area and between radius and diameter. So, find the diameter. What is it that I'm giving you in this problem? Giving you the radius. So what do I do when I give you a radius and I need to know the diameter? Loria. Yeah, it's just doubled, right? 7 multiplied by 2 is equal to 14. So that would be 14 yards. The diameter is equal to the radius times 2. So the diameter is 14 and the unit of measure would be yards. I'll leave 2, 3, and 4 with you. Here the diagram is showing a radius, and in 3 and 4 I'm telling you the radius is. Numbers 5, 6, 7, and 8. In each of these ones I am now saying find the radius. So in this diagram, I'll do 6 this time. In this diagram, what is the measurement that I'm giving you? Joshua. That's the diameter. So if I give you the diameter, how do I use that information to find the radius as it says to do? I should see some hands, a lot of hands. Students who are paying attention instead of trying to work ahead. Still not enough hands. Sophie, if I know the diameter, how do I find the radius? This is a radius. This is another radius. How many radius does it take to make a diameter, Sophie? 2. So if I give you the diameter, what do I do to find a radius? Divide it by 2. The diameter divided by 2 is equal to the radius, and in this case the diameter is 4. So 4 divided by 2 is equal to the radius, which is 2 units of measure. It was given to us in miles. So if the diameter is 4 miles, the radius is going to be 2 miles. Again, 5 and 6 are diagrams with a part of that circle measurement given. 7 and 8, I tell you exactly the name of the measurement that is given. And now, after we have a really, truly good understanding of radius and diameter, we should be successful with the next set of problems, where it says use the information given to find the area of each circle. Use your calculator's value of pi. So if I give you the area, if I'm asking for the area, it's probably a good idea to write down the formula. How do I find the area of a circle? Thank you, Cambria. Exactly, radius squared times pi. So a problem like number 9 should be easy, because what is the information that I'm giving you? The radius. So all I need to do is take the information that it gives me and plug it into that formula. Area is equal to the radius squared times pi. Here's the radius. The radius is 11.7, which is going to be squared, and then multiplied by pi. And you have calculators, so we can type that in. 11.7 squared times pi is equals 430.0526. Round your answer to the nearest tenth means I need to keep the tenths place, but I need to look into the hundredths place to help me round. So I need something here. Looking at that 5 in the hundredths place, that 5 is going to be enough to make that 0 round up to a 1. So 430.1, and this is going to be miles squared. These are square units of measure when I am finding the area. So 430.1 miles squared. I'll leave number 12 as practice, where it also gives the radius. Let's see, what would I need to do for number 10? It says the diameter is 11.8 kilometers. Will you please check in with your groups while I pause the recording? How can I find the area when it doesn't give me the radius? It gives me the diameter instead. Talk with your groups. Ready, set, go. What is the plan? I give you the diameter instead. What do I do? We'll start with Dylan. Yeah, just like we saw up here. If I give you the diameter and I need the radius, you take that diameter and you divide it by 2. So when I'm telling you the diameter is 11.8, we first need to divide it by 2 so we can find the radius. And 11.8 divided by 2, anyone have that for me? Thank you, Trace. 5.9. So now, even though it gave me the radius, or excuse me, even though it gave me the diameter, I use that to now say the radius is 5.9. The units of measure were kilometers. They are still going to be kilometers. So now that I know the radius is 5.9 kilometers, what do I do now? What's that next step? Alexis. Exactly. We know the area is equal to 5.9 squared, because that's our radius, then multiplied by pi. Type that into your calculator. 5.9 squared multiplied by pi. When I type that into my calculator, I get area is equal to 109.3588. And of course there's more, but since I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, this is good enough. When I round to the nearest tenth, that means I'm keeping the tenths place. I need to look to the hundredths to see how it affects the tenths place. And the hundredths is a 5. That's going to make that tenths place round up to 109.4. Talk with your groups. What are the units of measure that I am going to use here? Talk with your groups, please. Ready, set, go. Did you guys come up with kilometers squared? Why is it squared and not just kilometers? Grant? Yeah, we're looking at the area. The area is measured in square units. The way that I always think of it is when I'm finding the circumference would be the amount of fence that I need to go around the outside. And the area would be the amount of square pieces of grass I would need to put inside, which is why it is squared, because these would be the little square pieces of grass that I would need to put inside. There's lots more to practice. On the back side, you're going to notice there aren't any directions. It's just because it's a continuation of that last set where it says use the information given to find the area of the circle. I do have some challenge problems at the end. So on each of these, we're finding the area of the circle. At the very, very end, at 23 and 24, I'm not giving you the radius or the diameter. I'm giving you the circumference. So I'm going to let students practice on this for a second. Then we can come back and see if we can figure out 23 and 24 together. If you can figure them out on your own before, then that's great. So let students work ahead to practice through 22, and we'll come back together at the end. Pause the recording to give yourself a chance to practice these as well. All right. On all the other ones, up through 22, it was nice and easy. I give you the radius, so you can just square the radius and multiply it by pi. Or I give you the diameter, so you just divide it by 2 so that you have the radius, and then you can square it and multiply it by pi. The circumference ones are different. I'm not giving you the radius or the diameter, I'm giving you the circumference. So here's what we need to do when I give you the circumference. I remember that the formula for circumference is, yes, Siri? Go ahead. Well, tell me this though. What is the formula for circumference since we need it? Exactly.
Since we already have the circumference and the radius, do all to find the area, so we need to divide the circumference by pi.
Yes, that's exactly right. So when I use the formula for circumference, I know that I can find the radius. And since ultimately I need the radius so that I can find the area, we're going to use the circumference to find the radius. So the circumference is 18.8. And that's equal to the radius doubled, because the radius doubled is our diameter, and that is multiplied by pi. So just as Zuri said, I'm going to divide by pi to undo this. And because I'm lazy, guess what else I'm going to do? I'm going to divide by 2 at the same time. Instead of creating multiple steps, I'm going to divide by 2 and pi at the same time. The 2's will divide out, the pi's will divide out, and that is going to leave me with just the radius. So in my calculator, I want to make sure that I am typing this in carefully. 18.8 divided by 2 pi. So 18.8, I think it's best to create that fraction bar so that we're dividing not just by 2, but also by pi. So divide by 2 pi, press enter, and that tells us that the radius is 2.99211. What do you think that really means the radius is if it's 2.99211? Yeah, probably. Go ahead, Dylan. I'm going to say that the radius is really probably 3 if it's 2.99, right? So if the radius is 3, and you can be precise and you can say it's 2.99211, that's fine. I think you'll probably end up with the same answer if we approximate now and say that that means that the radius is 3. But with the radius of 2.99, now we can use the formula to find the area, which is the area is equal to the radius squared, then multiplied by pi. And since we took all that time to use a circumference to find the radius, now we can reuse that information. The radius is going to be squared and multiplied by pi, and then we'll have the area. So 2.99 pi, 2.99 squared times pi is equal to, I ended up with, because I didn't do any rounding, I just used the answer from my calculator, I got 28.12586. You guys get the same thing? And rounded to the nearest tenth, that means that the area is equal to 28.1. What are the units of measure here? Cambria? Miles squared. And that leads very, very nicely. I'm leaving anything else that you did not finish in class. That is homework. So 24, that's homework. Anything else that you didn't finish, that is going to be homework. Practice for your quiz tomorrow. I want to return to 4 and 5 from our last lesson. We talked about this at the end. There's one circle that has the same numeric value for its circumference and area. So they're saying that the area is equal to the circumference. And we wrote down those formulas, so now we need to figure out what to do with that. What would we do, Grant? Pause there for just 1 second. You're right. So r squared, instead of writing it with exponents, we can write that as an r times r, right? A number times itself. And here we have, as Grant said, r times 2 multiplied by pi. Keep going. Yeah, exactly. So what we're seeing is, look at what we have that's the same on each side. A pi, right? We have an r that's the same. And since these have to be equal, what does that mean? This r would have to be the same as this 2. Because 2 times 2 is the same as 2 times 2, or 2 times 2 is the same as 2. squared. So this happens only when the radius is equal to 2. When the radius is equal to 2, we have a very unique circumstance where the circumference is equal to the area. Numerically, that gets us to number 5. What does that mean then? Explain the difference in units for circumference and area. What are the units when I'm finding the area? We don't know if it's feet or centimeters, but whatever it is, it's going to be units squared. What are the units when I'm finding circumference? Units, exactly. So what is the difference in these units? One is a square unit of measure, and one is a linear unit of measure. So square units, these are linear units. So even though numerically it's going to give the same number, the units of measure are going to be different. Again, anything not finished in class is homework. That's it for today's lesson. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.